right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome all. I'm Wendy Noss. I'm Executive Director of the Consortium of Social Science Associations in Washington, D.C., and this is COSSA Headlines, a regular check-in with the social science community about what is happening in Washington, recent developments, areas of opportunity or concern, and then most importantly, what we can do as a community to address some of the things that are going on. So we have a very interesting and hopefully provocative for you all, get you thinking guest today. Dr. Erica Groshen is here, former BLS commissioner, as many of you probably know. And so she's going to have the bulk of the time to give us her thoughts on what's going on with the shakeup at BLS. But before I do that, just a couple of updates from COSSA. I see a number of new faces in the list here, so thank you for joining. If you're not familiar with COSSA activities, this is just one of them. We are a membership organization, but our members are institutional, so universities and scientific societies, which is probably how you heard about this event today. We have lots of resources that are available to our members, including newsletters, action alerts, and other things. So if you're not already receiving those things, there'll be links at the end where you can sign up to get more advance notice of things like this, but lots of other activities as well. So before we turn it over to Dr. Groshen, wanted to just provide a couple of very quick updates on what's going on in Washington. And the main headline is the shutdown, which means not a lot else is going on right now. The research advocacy, science advocacy community that COSSA belongs to and engages with is in a weird position because a lot of what's happening with the shutdown is well above our pay grades. They're not things that the science advocacy community are going to be able to change necessarily. So what we've been focusing a lot on is giving you all the information and the resources you need so that you can engage with your elected officials, or at least have a better handle on what's going on and what it might mean for research. So at least in terms of the government shutdown, we're almost at a month of the shutdown. I'm sure you've seen all the reporting about the reductions in force. Specifically, most recently, we've seen with CDC with the abrupt firing of 1,000 employees and then the calling back of 500 of those, noting that it was a coding error that has led to that. And if you're reading the coverage of some of the other research and science agencies, it's just chaos all over, with people receiving no checks or improper amounts to their paychecks, things like that. It's a pretty wild time. When it's going to end, your guess is as good as mine. But if you watch the Congress, this is really where the decisions are going to have to be made. And so there has been talk over the last few days about perhaps a continuing resolution at fiscal year 24 levels, so last year's levels, into next year, potentially for the whole year, which is what we saw happen this year. But of course, the Democrats are continuing to hold up any CR. But the latest we're hearing is, maybe lengthening it to later on. But of course, if the two chambers can't agree to a bill, nothing's going to happen in the immediate future. So I mentioned that and COSSA's resources so that you can get the latest on what's going on as it happens by signing up for our newsletter, which is free, if you haven't done so already. And then just a few things that you have at your disposal right now. We issued an action alert a couple of weeks ago, which is calling on your members of Congress to reopen the government, and then once that happens, to fund science agencies at the appropriate levels. And so we urge you to take advantage of that. Go to the QR code there, and there you will see a letter that you can tailor and send to your elected officials, urging them to support science. Also wanted to flag for you that we have a new resource that we're working on. It's called COSSA 101, a crash course on the federal government. And this is where we're putting together some easy explainers on some of these sort of DC inside the Beltway terms that you might hear reported on, but maybe don't know why or how they impact the social and behavioral science community. So we're not just defining what these things mean, but what it actually means for research. So our first document is on what is a government shutdown and what that might mean for if you're a federal grantee, for example. And we'll be having more released in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. And then finally, we recently announced the dates for our Advocacy Day. So we do an in-person Capitol Hill fly-in day every spring, where we invite you all to come and we train you and give you materials and messages, and we send you to the Hill to have in-person meetings and to build relationships with policymakers and their staff. And so that has been set for March 23rd and 24th of next year. And more details will come out over the next couple of weeks as registration opens and we have more details. But for now, save that date because we'd love to have you join us in Washington. All right, but the main attraction today, if you will, is Dr. Erica Groshen, who is kind enough to join us and talk about what's going on with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. She is a senior economics advisor at Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations and former commissioner of the BLS during the Obama years and into the Trump first term. And we've asked her to talk with us today about the shakeup, what's going on at BLS. COSSA has been doing a lot of the reporting on what's been going on, but there's so much. And it's, my opinion is, to be honest, statistical agencies tend to fly under the radar and don't get a lot of attention, certainly in the mainstream media. So the fact that we're seeing BLS under such a microscope right now seems unique to me. So we asked Dr. Groshen if she'd come in and share her thoughts, and we invite all of you to join the conversation through the chat or sometime at the end if you'd like to engage. So I'm going to unshare and kick it over to you, Dr. Groshen.
Right. Well, thank you, Wendy. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon for you. I'm in Seattle, so it's still morning here. I'm gonna tell you what I think is up at BLS, both very immediately and in the long run, and talk to you about various things going on, and then end up with some action items, which are always important. So there we go. So I'm going to start talking about the BLS in general, my time as commissioner. Then I'm going to go on to these mission critical challenges, both the long-standing and the immediate ones. And you'll hear two big themes here: funding and trust. And then transition to thinking about 21st century official statistics and the need to modernize, and then ending with call to action. So, background. Let me tell you a little bit about my 4 years as being commissioner of BLS. First of all, it's a great job. I highly recommend it. Anybody offers it to you, take it seriously. There are three things that I really loved about the job. The mission is very pure and it's very important. You work with just the best data nerds on the face of the earth. They're really highly professional and very dedicated to the mission. And you learn something new every day about the economy, about official statistics, about the way government works, about your stakeholders' issues. So it's just, it really was a fascinating 4 years for me. And during those 4 years, all sorts of things happened. Very early on in my tenure, my second, third month, I had to cut, we had the budget sequester. I had to cut 3 programs from BLS. So I just met all my children, and then I had to eliminate 3 of them. So green jobs, international labor comparisons, and mass layoff statistics, I killed them. It was tough, but it was necessary, especially given the fact that funding just got worse and worse and worse after that. If I hadn't done that, it would have compromised the quality of all of the programs. We had a shutdown in 2013 also, not long after I joined. That was just 16 days. It seemed like a long one. And during that time, Ben Bernanke called me up and said, well, could the Fed pay you to put out the jobs report? And the answer had to be no. It was the will of Congress that we be shut down. And so that was an interesting event. The Friends of BLS were founded in 2014. I'll be talking more about the Friends of BLS, but basically a way for stakeholders from outside to support the work of the agency. We focused a lot on modernization, and that's something, interestingly enough, modernization is as old as the agency, but the issues now are different and quite pressing, incorporating big data, incorporating AI, dealing with falling response rates, things like that. There are the budget challenges. I'll talk more about that, data sharing, particularly the issue of the BLS and the Census Bureau having separate business registers because they're not allowed to share the data. And some other fun things like we inducted the first BLS commissioner and the first female BLS commissioner into the Labor Hall of Fame in 2015 to celebrate the contributions they made. So BLS, as you probably all know, is the principal federal agency responsible for measuring 3 things: labor market activity, working conditions, and price changes in the economy. And to do that, it collects, analyzes, and disseminates essential economic information. And the whole purpose of doing all of that is to support public and private decision making, which is a foundation of our of our of our economy and the way we what we call freedom, what we think of as freedom, is people being able to make decisions for themselves. And that is that we believe it gives us the best outcomes, but sometimes we forget that that's only true if people base their decisions on sound information. Otherwise, they get what is technically known as lousy decisions, and that doesn't help anyone. All right, so in size, the BLS is the second largest statistical agency in the federal government. Around 2024, it had about 2,400 employees. Census is the largest. BEA is not one of the largest, but it is the other third partner of producing most of the principal federal economic indicators that measure the pretty much measure the business cycle, overall economic conditions in the country. And it's all based on mission critical to the BLS is trust, and this means delivering facts to everybody. Right. And so I used to show this slide a lot when I was at BLS. What is the BLS answer to the question, is the glass half full or half empty? And the BLS answer is, this is a 12-ounce glass with 6 ounces of liquid. So that is the way that that it reports information, and it and then it provides it to everybody on an equal basis. All right, so let's talk about the mission critical challenges, both long run and immediate. So I'm going to show you some charts in a minute, but let me summarize them first. Survey response rates are falling. This is not new to anybody at this meeting, right? So, but you think about, say, just since 2015, the current population survey participation has fallen from 88% to 68%. So it used to be well up in the high 90s. It took a long time to get down to 88%. In the past 10 years, the decline has been more dramatic, but this is just symptomatic of a universal decline in response rates, and the causes: survey fatigue, privacy concerns, civic responsibility are known. The consequences: rising costs, rising standard errors, higher risk of bias, lower granularity are quite profound. The solutions aren't easy, but basically the ones that seem to have most legs are reducing burden via internet or electronic reporting, and those may only slow the decline as opposed to actually reversing it. And then there's the other one that probably has the most promise, but is the hardest to do, certainly in the short run, is augmenting or substituting for that information with administrative data. So I'll be talking more about that, and this is the vein of modernization that I'll be talking about. Now, the other important issue for the BLS and most of the statistical system is the decline in funding. In real terms, BLS has declined by about a fifth since 2009 because it's part of discretionary federal funding. It's not because BLS has enemies in Congress. But it has no champions either. The consequence of this has been much slower modernization than the agency would have engaged in and could have engaged in. The solutions for that are searching more and more for efficiencies, obviously, but probably the most important thing is to raise awareness of the administration and elected officials about these issues. And to do that, that's going to require more stakeholder engagement. So these are the charts for response rates. These come right off the BLS website. If you ever, of course, right now they're not updating it, but BLS keeps these pretty much updated. And so you can always go there if you want a handy dandy chart about declining response rates that's fairly current. On the left are the household survey response rates that the BLS sponsors, and on the right are the establishment survey response rates. And they show some, different patterns depending on the survey and the type of responses, but they all trend down. Here is a chart from that was recently put together by the Center for American Progress. There are many versions of this, but basically, here's BLS funding in 2026 dollars, and you just see a very sad decline here. All right. So those, well, and the last thing to show here, I suppose, is the red dots down here is what the what the White House requested, which was a decline of 8% in nominal terms, which would get the BLS down to a loss of almost a third of its funding. The Senate, let's see, the Senate had suggested flat funding, and the House actually had an increase in nominal terms, which was very welcome. But who knows what's going to happen? Okay. So immediate concerns. So that's the context in which this new administration started. So since January 2025, the up until August 1st, the damage to BLS was all collateral damage. The same things being done to BLS that were being done to almost all of the rest of the federal government. Leases and contracts canceled without consultation, all of the advisory committees terminated, and pretty severe staffing reductions. BLS staffing is down by 20% from what it was. A third of the leadership positions are vacant. We have PhDs out there collecting data instead of doing research. And so it's not on a sustainable, before the shutdown, it wasn't on a sustainable footing, but no wheels had fallen off yet. And then the administration proposed an 8% cut for 2026. So this is just a chart of the staffing for BLS. And this is the dots here are what we think they think that the staffing is likely to be for 2026. Hopefully they'll be able to hire a few people. But anyway, it's dire. And here is a chart made from the BLS website, just their their org chart, and showing how many of the positions are vacant. So of the 35 positions, leadership positions in BLS, 12 are vacant, and only 23 are filled. And the ones that are vacant include a number of associate commissioners. That's sort of they're the ones that are heads of the big units, and then many of the assistant commissioners that work under the associate commissioners. So it's a pretty dire situation. Okay. Then we have the events that really started on August 1st. And I'm going to preface that by reminding everybody how mission critical trust is to a statistical agency. And it's critical for two reasons. First of all, people aren't going to use the data and the statistics from the agency if they don't trust them, because using them means informing important decisions that they are in some ways accountable for or will have big consequences for themselves or for others. And why would you use data that you don't trust for that? But it's also mission critical for survey responses because, again, you have the respondents participation is voluntary. Even when it's legally required, it's actually really voluntary because no one has ever been prosecuted for not complying, filling out a survey, a federal survey. So it's really all voluntary, and there, if people are going to be convinced to take on the burden of filling out the survey, an important incentive to them is that that people are going to use it and that the data are trustworthy. And so if you don't trust that your data is going to be handled properly and for good use, why would you respond? So on August 1st, the administration did two things that I'll separate, but they happened more or less at the same time. The administration lodges baseless claims to refute unwelcome news for the employment situation. And those baseless claims undermined trust with the administration's supporters, who may have had doubts and then had them confirmed by not just the president, but also the Secretary of Labor herself issued a statement undermining trust in the data. So the administration's supporters, no doubt, lost some trust in the data. Others who did not believe those baseless claims, I think, had new fears that the administration would begin meddling. And of course, the baseless claims took two forms. One is about meddling, and the other one was trying to weaponize the transparency with which BLS reports the limitations of its data to make it appear that the BLS was incompetent. Right? So both of those undermine trust. And then there was the firing of the commissioner. And that signaled that political interference may be more likely going forward. So the commissioner was fired, killing the messenger, and there was a rush to nominating another nominee, a nominee who was really insufficiently vetted. And all of those things raised people's fears, the ones who didn't believe the allegations, raised people's fears of manipulation going forward. So I'm going to segue now to talk about the shutdown directly, and then we can circle back to the quality of the data. So the shutdown, the direct impact of the shutdown is that there is only one person at work at BLS right now, the acting commissioner. That's Bill Wyatrowski. He is the deputy commissioner, and I appointed him. He is a BLS lifer. He has said on more than one occasion that if anybody tried to manipulate the data, he'd be the first to walk out, and most of the leadership of BLS would walk out with them. But of course, he's not producing any data at the moment. There's no data being collected, no data being processed, no releases being issued, with one exception that I'll talk about. There are no website updates. There's no modernization going on. The September CPI, for which the data had already been collected, was released on the 24th, on Friday, and that was because Social Security benefits are indexed to the CPI. So the COLA adjustment needed this information to be released. And so OMB decided that BLS would be allowed to bring back the staff to produce that one report from the data they already had in hand. That occurred. That's over. Bill's back to being alone. Okay. The impact on BLS data is going to be more profound than it was during the 16-day shutdown, because we're losing an entire month of data collection. In 2013, it was just half a month, and that gave the agency a chance to double up and collect a month's worth of data in 2 weeks, or sometimes 3 weeks, because they pushed back collection periods, things like that. That's just not going to be as likely this time. But the impact is going to really depend on the duration of the shutdown, the timing in the monthly cycle, right? And the particular program involved, because each program really has a different design. To get an idea of what happened in 2013, and then you'd want to scale it up from there, I've got the links here to the updated release schedule that the BLS put out in 2013 after that shutdown. And so you can see for each one of those programs what happened. And I also have the links to a couple of other documents that are just focused on the employment situation, the jobs report for each one of those. The short answer is, for the employment situation, it's probably much easier to recover the payroll survey than the household survey. Because for the household survey, you're asking people to tell you what they were doing during the week that includes the 12th of the month. And if they don't get asked that until the beginning of November, the recall bias issues may be too severe. Okay. And of course, this recovery this time will be complicated by the staff shortage. In 2013, BLF staffing wasn't down by 20%. So, and their leadership was intact. So, okay. So let me digress now to a question that came up a lot after August 1st. Do revisions to data show that BLS data are bad or fudged? All right. I think most of you know the answer, but let me go through the answer to this. So let's start off with something we all know. Statistics are estimates. Estimates have strengths and limitations, every one of them. Perfect is not a word one should use with statistic, right? They're estimates. But the statistical agencies are really the gold standard, and they earn trust in those statistics by the degree of their professional expertise, by transparency, by independence, objectivity, and how they put them together, by protecting the data uh, uh, from other uses that could harm people, right? And by providing equal access to everybody. So those are the foundations of trust. Um, and private statistics that are out there that try and measure similar concepts are complements, but fundamentally not substitutes because they rely on federal statistics for weighting, for validation, um, and they have less incentive for transparency, for equal access, to inform policy and to provide the continuity that you really need. That's what makes federal statistics infrastructure for our economy. So revisions. Revisions are a feature, not a bug. And it takes a little while to fully absorb that, but they are an intentional feature. They are not a bug. They do not reflect error, and they do not reflect interference. So what a revision does is it balances two needs, timeliness and accuracy. Let's talk in terms of the payroll survey, but this applies to BEA estimates and all sorts of other estimates that are revised, right? The idea is that you have people who need to make decisions now, and there is a way to get a good indicator of what the final number is going to be that will help the people who must make a decision right now. And so the statistical agency puts out preliminary releases that it has tested and believes provide a reasonably good estimate, or the best estimate available at the time the decisions need to be made. It processes early responses, but those responses are incomplete, right?